But that's where we're at. And this is what it looks like with like the camera with better adjustments on the camera then. Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy Unhinged Behavior here, Kyrandis. I had to write this out a little instead of free flowing from my head because today's devlog is more about the anxieties and things going through myself a bit. So a bit of exposition here about internally when developing, and then afterwards we'll just go through what's happened since last, if I even remember what happened in the last video. I briefly looked through it, but I still there's just so much, honestly. So I'm just gonna start off with obviously the uprising of AI is an anxiety point that a lot of us probably share, and some are thriving in it, and most of us are probably being sent to the abyss with it. I try not to involve AI with everything I've done here, being as transparent about it as possible. Most of the AI I've used is merely conceptual or figuring out solutions on ChatGPT. And even then, I don't really even use it that much because I get hallucinatory answers a lot of the time. I can safely say I haven't really used any AI generation for any of this and all this work. I actually believe that maybe the clunkiness or unrefinedness as a human effort will probably be more distinct given how everything's unfolding out there right now. And if it backfires, I don't really care. At least I know I can improve over time and just by doing it over and over. And so, yeah, I'm not really too concerned about that. But I can safely say that, I haven't really used AI generation for anything here. If I do, obviously, I want to be transparent about it. I don't want to be like deceptive or anything about it. This whole project has been really like trying to just showcase what I can do and also sort of like a proof for myself as well. So resigning efforts over to that really doesn't make any sense to me. So obviously, I'm not going to engage in it as in much resistance as I can. Most of the stuff I've used here or for all the things that are beyond my understanding on an advanced framework has been procedural on its back end. So I at least understand like a little bit of like how the systems are used, are created and processed. One of the other things is like later updates into the engine sort of start getting into this AI generation feely stuff, but the most light filter I've come across is getting different results by doing the same thing on any AI generation, and it didn't do that. So I assume there's something on the back end I just don't understand again, because usually with complex solvers from multi-million dollar corporations that are developing this with, a lot of experts involved, I probably won't get a deep understanding. It took me a long time just to understand the surface of like character creation just as a statute rigdolled, and then it took even longer. And given I have to be like a profession of every level in this development, there won't be enough time anyway since I'm practically the toolbox instead of the tool of in a machine making like one spot super tight and working. So there's it's just not possible for like obviously a single person have to scale up or something if I want something bigger or whatever or whatnot, but I'm trying to make sure everything is doable within like the scope of my own hands and that I understand what's going on. Giving myself a little bit of experience into every single department that requires and is needed is probably incredibly valuable if I ever have to like direct a team or something, because I would at least know what's needed to get it created to some degree. I wouldn't know like obviously a super deep dive direction except for a few areas, but this is pretty much like I feel it's like insanely valuable just because I have to know everything, and even like the weakest spots that I really frustrated at working on, such as environments and user interface, it's not really an issue because like I may be super frustrated, but I'm also like super interested in trying to get better at it, even though they are like the weakest spots of my development currently. Like I absolutely hate the concept and abstracts like of user interface, but my brain is also like, I need to know how the fuck this works. It's actually driving me insane. So yeah, it's like that kind of energy. So I want to start off with, I don't really know what I'm doing truthfully, or that's the imposter speaking, and I do know what I'm doing, but I have to stop going in circles in myself like that. The reality is, I've always been like a satellite around the games industry, and I've done extreme dives into development at certain points in life. We're talking like a combination of external factors hindered me in many ways, but it really never stopped me from being engaged in it daily, whether I'm playing games or whatnot. And I do mean daily, like playing games at an extreme effort while I'm experiencing most games. The thing that came naturally to me the most was always deciphering what the media was presenting and expressing itself. It wasn't just oriented to the games you've seen on my YouTube channel. I play all kinds of games like casual, mobile, desktop, autoplay, idle games, puzzle games, point and click adventure, cozy games, sim games that are never shown here. At work in past and present, my thoughts are pretty much always surrounded with how things unfold in a scene or writing down song tunes in my head that I can't translate out in any way or form because I don't know how. Let me describe this frustration to you that I don't think most will understand, but it's essentially if you have a song in your head that you can clearly hear the tune, the instruments, the sound, and the voices and humming involved, but the song has never existed. It's wholly frustrating when you hear the theme song often, but you can't get it out of your head. The normal answer obviously would be, well, just compose the song and play it and work it out. Yes, that would be the answer if it was the only thing crippling my thought process every now and then. The other issue is I want this idea developed and requires more than just that. So that's obviously something I have to either retire to just stuck in my head and I have to figure out a way to get it out by well, I've already taken like a few steps to starting to try and get it out by actually working with an artist that's familiar with music. And then I have to work on the other 90% of things. So basically like I either have to choose one part of it to offshoot, and then the others I have to handle everything else. It's like it's basically like it's like a cheat code or like a skip shortcut. It's like, oh, you've done all this, you get to choose one thing you want to skip shortcut on, and that's the one thing I want to skip shortcut on. I know I can probably do it too because I was already looking up like instruments and stuff like an una corda and like glassy piano and like violin strings and then beats per minute, rhythm, percussion, and then all these other like terms that you just never think of like stingers, risers, brams, and all these other things. I was like, what are all these terms? Doesn't make any sense to me considering I'm being mostly like a visual artist. So there's that. And then just actually knowing those terms and like waveforms or whatever, like formant shifting, like pitch shifting, like just knowing some of the terms is already helpful. Major scales, minor scales, augmented, diminished, and scales, pedals, single chord, double string, triple string, whichever, all these things. So that's just like constant learning in that department of like it's like digging through a forest and trying to find a path so that you know where to start walking on it so that you can actually get it to the destination essentially. I fully understand that my game will probably be clunky and an unoptimized mess to some degree, as this engine seems to have this reputation around it. I don't believe it has that reputation though. It's just the development cycles of those products that cause that. I've played plenty of titles utilizing the engine and the smoothness and clunkiness and unoptimized or optimized feeling from one title to the next varies in universes apart. I'm doing whatever efforts I can to make it run smoothly and engaging in crazy stuff that I don't think most games that are, crazily or severely funded are trying to do, which is okay because I take it as a liberty to do wild stuff because and be unhinged to the rules because I'm not beholden to the dollar. A lot of the times I'm working on it and I'm constantly arguing against myself. The first voice usually goes screaming like, "Am I going to be able to finish this? What if people don't like it? This is so much work for one person. Is it even worth it?" And then there's also like, you always forget what you're doing. Are you even learning anything? Yeah, and the other voice goes like this: "Yeah, I'm going to finish it because if you don't, the fear of getting to your deathbed and not having tried is infinitely worse. Who cares if people don't like it? You like it. That's what matters. AI and whatever doesn't mean anything. Tune out the noise and keep going. There's so much noise." Yes, it's an insane amount of pull for one person, but don't you believe the story at the end would be even more worth telling after? And I've already recorded a lot of steps throughout, and from the past, every time I've done anything to its end has always left myself in disbelief of my own efforts and talents. So it's impossible to let the imposter win and I think I've learned nothing. Some of the things I've created might have forgotten, but the more extreme things I remember how they're built from a literal empty space to a full on existence. And I've given a bit more credibility that not everyone can do that, and I should accept that as magic instead and be in wonder. Depending on the day, one voice is louder than the other, and going through it is mostly trying to balance a grounded approach and not letting either voice have too much credence to its influence on myself getting through the tasks. My only thing to you as a viewer and myself in the future, if I look back, is that if you're incredibly passionate about something, remove yourself from people telling you you can't do it or doesn't believe in you in that context. If anything, it should be motivation to bring the middle finger to the forefront of their vision. And even if you fail doing so, it won't matter because if the passion is that strong, you'll try again anyway in some shape or form. If I listened to people in the past to never have started or give up on YouTube, I wouldn't be sharing with you today. I also wouldn't be sharing my progress. I would or have motivation cheers across the globe giving me a boost of do it with like online friends I've met because of YouTube. And if I listened to those other negative people that were gatekeeping who said it's too late, just do something else, you wouldn't even have this footage today, and I would have never made some of these characters and development lines to begin with, or the random mechanics I'm coming up with. So yeah, I can trace back to every forking path in life decision that led me here, and if I believed in the negative ones along the way, where I chose the wrong adventure numerous times in this pick your own adventure game of real life, most of the time one thing was common. The ones that told me I couldn't had the greatest influence with the worst outcomes. And the ones that told me I could and believed and wondered why I haven't and stayed along and kept echoing that in positive context pulled me out of the abyss anchor I was holding on to. All right, so anyways, that's enough about myself. So I'm going to just go through what went well and what went wrong in this current step of development, if I can remember it. So what went right is that I actually started having a lot of fun carving stairs out in the environment. This was actually like really fun to do, and also just it got my head like really focused on like micro detailing, and I guess this kind of turned out okay. It's still like work in progress. It's not satisfactory to me right now. Like this is still not enough detail to me. Like I think this spot here is okay in terms of details, just on the floor. And these gates, I need to like turn them to be interactable instead of just leaving one open like that. And just making sure like the stairs here were like evened out were was it was already like just interesting to figure out how to do that, and making sure like the landscape and like the floor elements were tied together. It was ultimately a pretty interesting process that I think was a good starting point for me as environment work, since I'm not good at it. And just trying to fill out like the scene. It's basically like a supporting path for what the game is asking for. Same with like just like this as well. All of this doesn't really make any sense, which is okay. It's just more or less like a path that the character has to run through, so that you have some kind of like deviation or variety going on here. And most of the time, I'm just trying to keep a sense of simple stuff going on in my head, because if I start doing anything complicated and I don't know the path all the way to the end, it's gonna be a huge time sink. So one of the things I do is usually like more simple stuff for things I'm unfamiliar with. For something more like the VFX on like my character or whatever, I understand like how to get to the very end of like that. Like for the lightning effects, for instance, like for the lightning effects, it like for these lightning effects here, and it's scrolling down the sword. I understand how to get from the beginning to the end there for like how to do all that. And I guess to explain it a little bit is that it's first off, I have to get the sword's like coordinates and all its vertexes and map it all out, and then I have to find out what the end point is of the blade is right here, and then I mark down those digits as to what their vertex ID is or whatever, and then I basically scroll it down and mark like every single spot randomly from that point to down here. So there's basically like a map value range from here to here, and then from here to here, all the way to like the crystal, and it's pretty much like pinpoint accurate. And then basically I'm doing like a list and a linear interpolation of like where this spawns, and it counts down from there to here to get to the crystal is why it looks like how it looks. And then on the outside here, there's sort of like an invisible bounding box around the character that's sort of like shifting and rotating around based on like also like random coordinates based on character like angles and distances that I just measured out so that it looks random enough. And then from that, I make it spawn like in a random area in those like miniature areas around each point so that it looks like it's circling around the character. And that's kind of how it goes. And it's also connected to her fingers too. So I'm also targeting it also in her fingers. So these are basically bouncing and flowing off of her hands in from the sword into her hands. And this is more like a beginner step of like where I wanted to take this effect further later on, because I wanted her to do like sort of like a Super Saiyan charge up or whatever, where it'll come up from her feet and through her body into like an ultimate attack later that I'm slowly designing. But you know, in the thought process of that, I know how to where the starting point is and where the end point is and how it should look clearly in my head before I even make it. But the environment, on the other hand, I do not know how it should look like or how it should be like, you know, what drives a great environment or like outlook or whatever. So I'm engaging more in like a lot more simple steps, going like, let's just, you know, make sure like some of the shape outlines from some of the mentors I've like learned from, and like, you know, how does it lead the player, how does it support the visual element around the frame of the game. So those are the things that I'm worried about environments, and that's all I'm worried about because that's as much as I know as like good principles and concepts. As well as like, you know, same with the hair colors and stuff, like this is like completely experimental, and I know exactly what's going on here too, but again, that's like from, and that's all somewhat surface level, I want to say. I don't think it's even that deep level. There's just like some strange tricks and math that I'm doing in there to get it to work like that. But but yeah, that's a long story of itself too. Anyways, so yeah, like stairs and environments have been a pretty good exercise for me as like environment creation, because one, it just helps me do like elevation as well, so it gives like a very different sense of like where everything is rather than just working on a flat ground. If I was working on a flat ground like out here, you know, it's actually quite a lot more intimidating when you're on a flat ground out here, because you're just like, how do I fill this space up, right? Usually you might want to start with like huge chunk blocks or whatever, which is fine. Like you want to placeholder and block everything out. And then for me, I have troubles registering that. I know that's probably a better way to do it, but for me it's more like I want, like, you know, I want to know the path that my character is going to take. And for me it was also figuring out how long should the character run around to get from here to here, and is it appropriate or is it too long or does it feel like it's dragging on. And I usually run it around like 10, 20 times just to make sure it feels okay, and just trying to imagine what would happen along the way. Because right now it's still very barren. These monsters are just, I treat them as bots essentially, because there are just like Unreal Engine assets that are free currently. And I do have to design monsters, which is, you know, a huge amount of work, right? But right now it's mostly just like a setup and making sure things are operating, and I understand how like, you know, the dummy actors are placed in place and things are working the way they should. Just making sure things are operating, and the only thing that's like very real right now is just this character. Everything around this character right now is very real. And I just have to do like, you know, some armor pieces and fashion and stuff that I also want to engage in, which is why she lost her coat, because I just wanted to see how plain of the character could get around with and see if things like looked okay before adding more decorations to her and everything. Considering like she has an earring that hasn't really even been shown. It's like really close to her face, but I don't even know if I can like see it. Oh, there's so much motion blur. But yeah, she does have an earring on her ears, like, but it's like completely hidden by her hair, and I've done nothing with her motions to actually reveal it. And that was like something I never completed either. And it's important to me because it's like part of like a core element of the game in terms of like expressing narrative. not so much like why it's there. Like it doesn't need to be there, but it's just there to support narrative and story. So that's what that's for. I wonder if there's a way I can like. Anyways, I have to also figure out like a zoom in like depth of field because she's blurred. She's blurring way too much like up close. It's because of like some screen effects I have going on right now that's causing that. But did I remove the earring? What the hell? One of the other things was for this development was that I was just actually getting like cinematics and stuff starting to get working. That was actually pretty interesting. So here's like some cinematics I started getting worked on. It's quite interesting just figuring out how this worked. I lost a lot of hours to just a hide player button that I thought my cinematics was not working and the character was just kind of like broken. But it turns out it was the player was just hidden and then I lost like several hours to a checkbox. But getting like this character here and then transitioning to the playable character was actually I wanted something that resembled a lot of like other games I played and making sure like the transition was like seamless. That was pretty cool when I got that working. It's actually pretty amazing actually. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm like, I can do just like whatever the hell I want and have it like transition from like character straight into gameplay into cinematic back into like gameplay and I was like, oh, this will be so fun to do once everything is like set up. So then I was like, yeah, because like the character is already like hyper detailed. That was a pretty fun like discovery to get to. And so yeah, like when I'm talking about like hyper detailed, it's the lighting in that stage in the main level is not that great, but I was just doing like some lighting tests and whatever in the main screen. And yeah, it's like with some camera effects and not even like screen effects. It already looked pretty good in my opinion from just like the start screen. And I was like, holy. And yeah, it was just like working on like UI stuff. And having like the lights just kind of rotate just to see like the details or whatever change was kind of like eye-opening or whatever. I was like, oh my god, I'm like I need to actually pull more detail out of my character because barely used inside the actual game. And on the start screen, I was like, wait a second. I really need to actually work better camera angles into like some of the attacks and stuff after I was doing this lighting test and stuff. And I was like, wait, there's so much stuff I'm missing now. So yeah, it was just like the details and everything else. What was it? Let me just detach the camera and move this. Yeah, I think yeah, the lighting does quite a lot here. Holy. Yeah, so basically like I don't even have any shots inside my game that go up this close where the detail is like this high. And it is being displayed in the game like this high. And I should probably optimize that because that's probably dropping the frame rate quite a bit. But, you know, not making like close-ups like this close is pretty much like a loss in detail because when I'm like this far out, obviously you don't need that much detail displayed because it can't even be displayed based on the pixels on the screen. But when you're up this close, it's like Jesus. But yeah, and then I have to actually like make certain design choices about like the character's overall looks to make sense of it. Otherwise, it'll just look like a pretty big mismatch. And I don't know. I'm not trying to go for like hyper realism or anything too. Like these eye proportions are completely unrealistic. Nobody's eyes are that big, and I don't think people's chins are that sharp too. It's almost like anime. So in any case, but this is like a lighting test that I was just like working on, and yeah, it was just like a start screen that I was like starting to work on as well. But that's where we're at, and this is what it looks like with like the camera with better adjustments on the camera than like a editor camera. I'm sure this could go even better. Some of the lights probably like a little bit hyper exposed on her face as it rotates, but you'll probably tone that down as it rotates. And I could probably, what else? I should probably like make her eyes like lock onto like the mouse or something and just look at the mouse while she's just standing there. That would probably look kind of funny. Yeah, and then I guess like, you know, I guess if you hit new game, I should probably like raise her hand and have her touch new game with you. I don't know. It's just like, you know, there's just the possibilities of just like random stuff, but I don't know. Maybe it'll add more character to the game or something, but it's like not necessary to do that, but you know, you can. Just takes time. That's really the real cost, is just time. But you know, it's fun to engage in like that thought process. But maybe I will do that actually, just because I'll live for the memes. Why not just develop them too? But yeah. So far, this is where it's at, and I just need to make like a better. I just need to make a better transition there because it's actually kind of abrupt. But you know, that's where I'm at as like a solo developer, and probably like fix these scenes up. This was just like a test case to make sure things were working. This is nothing in here is final except like the character that's like closest to anything that's resembling anything final. And yeah, that's a lot going on. Anyways, thanks for watching. I will see you next time. Peace.